There we go. We're back. So everyone, please welcome, as you'll probably all know, Mr. Jacson Bevens from the Cigar Thoughts Podcast. Jackson, thank you so much for coming on, my dude. I know it's a Monday morning over there and it's hectic for you, so we really appreciate you taking the time out.
It's my pleasure, man. Of all the things that I'm doing this morning, talking football with you guys is the one I'm looking forward to the most. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man. Yeah, we really appreciate it. Obviously, Jackson and I are both away from our usual studios. Mitch is in the comfort of his. Not to make us jealous or anything, Mitch. But we are going to be talking, as I said before, all about the Seahawks 26-20 win over the Denver Broncos. We're going to be doing our review. The way we're going to be doing our review this season, everybody watched the game, so I don't think we need to go into analysis. We have people like Jackson. There's some fantastic other podcasters that will do that. We want to break it down to 12 talking points. So each of us will pick 4. Jackson has 4. Mitch will have 4. I have 4. There will be some crossover, some overlap, as there's going to be, because the majority of us want to talk about the same amazing things or things that didn't quite go as amazing. So, Jackson, firstly, how are you? Where are you? That's a very nice looking gazebo you're under.
I am doing great. Always better after a win, especially one, a game that feels like as big of a deal as yesterday felt. But where am I? I'm at the Bellingham Golf and Country Club, Bellingham City, about an hour and a half north of Seattle. It's where I live. And this is, 1, my favorite place to be, but 2, I'm actually meeting a client here after this. So I figured I'd double dip and take advantage of the scenery.
Lovely. Perfect. Oh, and I'm in an old pub in the middle of Yorkshire in the northeast of England. So I think we know who's winning there then. Like I said, anyone will know Jackson from the Cigar Thoughts podcast. If you don't, by all means, I advise you to go on the YouTube, check out the podcast. It's amazing. Right? Yourself and Mike Barwin are on my regular. You guys get me through a lot of my long journeys when it comes to work. So I'm really looking forward to chopping this up.
It's very kind of you to say.
So talking with 12 talking points. So Jackson, would you like to start with your first one? We'll let everyone in the comments sort of discuss this as well, and we'll let's see what we can come up with some good talking points.
Absolutely. I think the thing that stood out to me the most was honestly the thing I was most nervous about, and that was defensive discipline. Seattle's just, there's no way to slice it. They've been a bad defense against good teams for a long time. They've had some good performances against bad teams. And, look, is Denver a great offense in their current iteration? Certainly not. I have severe doubts about Bo Nix as being ever becoming a very good quarterback. And I thought he looked terrible yesterday. That being said, there was nowhere for him to throw to. And that is new. Seattle did such a good job in this new Mike McDonald defense of passing off their responsibilities, which is something that they have struggled with a lot over the last, probably 6 years. I think 2017, probably the last year where we really felt like this was a good defense. And it's not been because of lack of talent. There was a lot of good players on this team last year on the defensive side of the ball, and they were terrible. They looked coached up. They looked disciplined. They looked like they were communicating well. And when you're learning a new system, it can be hard early on not to be robotic about it and really thinking about what your responsibilities are and making sure you don't mess up. That's not how they looked at all. They were out free-flowing, absolutely attacking on every single play, and they tackled they actually tackled really, really well. There were no yards after contact. There were hardly any yards after the catch. It was beautiful.
Yeah, completely agree. You have just mentioned one of my points, but our regular listeners and watchers will know myself as a ex-rugby player and coach. Tackling is my bag. It's one thing that I'm really high on, the biomechanics of it and how it all should work. And it's been something that has made me want to throw remotes at TVs for the last 3 or 4 years.
Totally.
My laptop has nearly become a discus many times. So that's one of the points I'll be getting to later as well. But I completely agree. It was so nice to see so much disguise and movement in that defense.
Yes.
And the linebackers as well, I thought they were fantastic. I said in our last pod of players to watch for, Dodson was my player. And I thought he was brilliant.
You nailed it. He looked great.
Yeah, he did. He did look really good. And for me, I think that the really interesting thing is we've gone the whole offseason saying there's going to be busted coverages, there's going to be missed assignments all over the place. So we need to be really careful with sort of tempering our expectation of the first half of this season. I was really coming out of the first half. I think the offense probably made the defense look more competent, but they were absolutely on it straight away. You know, we had to wait until the third quarter for a busted coverage, and it didn't result in a touchdown. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think the discipline on that defense was amazing from the off, which I didn't expect.
Well, and they had to be because the offense put them in really bad situations all first half long. Like there was no margin for error. Denver's first snap was in positive territory, and they had a whole bunch of drives that started out where they were basically in scoring position already, and Seattle didn't give an inch.
Yeah, and that was in that first half. That was the best thing to see. However, I believe your next point might be converse to that.
Yeah, man.
Point number 2, Jackson.
Yeah, the second thing I was most nervous about, I had my fears realized, and the offensive line is still just so chaotic. Denver's got a good defense. They really do. I am not going to take anything away from the personnel or coaching that they have, but that is not the best defense this team is going to face. And Seattle just got whipped. And George Fant getting hurt as he's filling in for Abe Lucas while he still recovers. I mean, Fant wasn't playing well, but then he got hurt, and now it's Stone Forsythe, and you just saw the defensive coordinator for the Broncos overload that side, and that would have been hard for anyone, but good coaches identify the weakest spot on the other side of the ball and are not afraid to hammer it. It's why Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan, when they've played the Pete Carroll Seahawks the last 5 years, they're using like a third of their offensive playbook. They are just identifying weaknesses and spamming them to death. And that's what Denver did. And that's okay because Seattle did try to kind of adjust for that. And I was happy to actually see some real adjustments in the second half in terms of how they did some combo blocks and, used tight ends and running backs to help out without completely taking them out of the play. But like on those two safeties, those plays were over before they started. You had the hold call in the end zone where he just got beat on the first snap. I think it was Laken Tomlinson. Or Anthony Bradford. It was Anthony Bradford. And then Laken Tomlinson got completely smoked on the Zach Charbonnet safety. And it was like, these guys didn't have you can't even call a play from your own 1 yard line other than like a QB sneak when you have no faith in your interior offensive line. So I don't know how much better that gets with the current personnel. I thought Connor Williams played well. And by that, I don't remember him really getting beat. I thought Charles Cross played really well. And when Abe Lucas is back, you have 60% of an above average line. I'm going to put my faith in Scott Huff, who they brought in with Ryan Grubb from the University of Washington to coach the offensive line. UW was named the best offensive line in college football last year. They looked the part. And it wasn't because they recruited the 5 best offensive linemen in the country. They really were coached up, but it's a steep climb this year, man. It's going to be tough for this offense to look really good with that type of blocking.
I
think it's
agree. I think.
You go, mate.
Oh, thank you. So I must have a lag. Like I said, it's hotel internet. Yeah, for me. It's the offensive line, as you said, has been such a horrible thing for us to have to witness because there's been injuries, inconsistency, awful coaching, which hopefully is completely changing now. But I think yesterday showed that Tomlinson, I wasn't high on us getting him as a veteran presence, fine, but I thought in the game he whiffed on so many blocks. I think the fact that we're now putting a lot of faith in the youth and the people that we have drafted will serve us well in the future, but it's going to be there will be some painful points this season, I think.
Yeah,
especially with the youth if you start bringing
Christian
them in.
Haynes is going to have to get good real quick.
Yeah.
I think our approach. Yeah, I was going to say. I think our approach to the O-line, when you look at who made the 53, we really had like an O-line by committee attitude with the likes of Laumea, Mike Jarrell as well. There was plenty of young talent that was drafted in that they weren't confident was going to survive the practice squad. So we've had to hold quite a lot of talent on there, which is a perfect scenario after what happened yesterday because nobody's spot is safe when you're carrying 11 O-linemen. You know, we're carrying 11 O-linemen because the talent's there. If you're that bad on game one, you better believe that Laumea is ready to take a guard spot or Haynes is ready to take a guard spot. Jarrell can play inside or right tackle, you know. So there's plenty of options to just go, okay, well, someone else has got your spot as a starter next week, and really see what they're like. I mean, Jarrell's the big question mark because we've only seen him play Division II football, but the athleticism's unbelievable. And if you're down two right tackles, how is he not the guy that's getting a shot? You know, so I don't like what I saw from the O-line, but I like what I saw from their perspective because they've got to look at that and go, I'm going to get a chance to play in my first season in the NFL, if that's the level. So yeah.
Okay. I think O-line is one of those things that we could have probably a whole pod about, just talking about the theories of who should start and how it's going wrong and how it's going to get better. But what was your third point, Jacson?
I was really impressed with how Geno Smith played after the first quarter. Things could not have started off much worse. He gets sacked on the first play. And, you know, look, unless you've got like a bona fide top 6 universally acclaimed quarterback, there's always going to be debate. And I'm pretty public about being pro Geno as a top 10, top 12 quarterback. And a lot of people push back on that. One, just because he's carried the bust potential and the bust label and the backup label for so long. Some people are just never going to get over that. I didn't think he was going to be very good as a Seahawks quarterback after the Russell Wilson trade. I was wrong. But like one thing I'm always going to do is adjust my opinion when presented with information that suggests I should do so. And the information that Geno Smith has given us over the last 2 years has been really promising, especially given the amount of pressure that he faced last year when he quote unquote regressed. That first sack is the type that Geno's really good at avoiding. And it felt like he just didn't even see it, didn't even feel it. And then he forced the issue on the second play and threw a really bad interception. Usually when Geno throws an interception, it's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to make a contested throw here. And sometimes the DB wins. Sometimes it throws a little bit off. Rarely do you see a Daniel Jones type interception from Geno. And that's what that was. He threw it straight into the middle of the defense. Then on the first play of the next drive, it was a penalty. And it would have been real easy in a brand new offense to just say we don't have it today and stop attacking and start protecting. But the Seahawks effectively started running the ball, and Geno played really well off of that. There wasn't anything available downfield, and he didn't have the time to set up anything downfield, but he got really, really sharp. And he ended up completing 72% of his passes. And you know, his touchdown to Zach Charbonnet, I mean, it was a pretty easy throw, but a lot of times you'll see quarterbacks just try and kind of feather it into a wide open player like Charbonnet was on that wheel route. He didn't. He threw that with conviction, hit him in stride, and that's the Geno that I believe in. So his ability to bounce back after really the worst start, it wasn't even in my range of outcomes for him to start out playing like that. And to come back and I think play really well was super encouraging for me.
Yeah, I agree. Mitch?
Yeah, I think, like you say, it's hard to imagine a worse start. I think a sack and an interception it was sack and interception on the first drive, wasn't it? That wasn't over 2. I'm not imagining this. It was on the first. Yeah, terrible. I can't imagine it being worse. But if we've learned anything about Gino, it's that mental fortitude that he has. He's one of the most resilient quarterbacks I've ever watched, I think. And I think that probably is his career is probably testament to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just eternally written off, and has somehow come back, secured the bag with a starting QB contract, and has held it down for 2 years and is still there, and he's become the main guy. So he's got a huge amount of fortitude, and he put it all on show yesterday, coming back from that opening drive to the rest of that game. I mean, if you end up on 72% after just how bad that was, and running for your life every down because the amount of resistance from that interior O-line is comparable to a wet paper towel, that is an achievement. It wasn't much better than that, honestly, for me. So,
but for me, I'm not going to talk too much about Gino because that's going to lend into one of my points really, really well. So,
sure.
Jackson, I'll let you go for your fourth and final point on this.
Man, the vibes are back in that secondary. My God, those dudes looked like they had been playing together in this system for 5 years. They had complete command of their assignments and played with it wasn't reckless abandon, but it was abandon. There was no fear in how they played. Julian Love, that was as good as I've ever seen him play. And I thought he was excellent over the second half. I thought he was one of the few bright spots on this defense over the second half of last year and really earned that Pro Bowl nod. He looked like an all-pro back there. Reek Woolen has been dying for coaching. He's someone that played 1 year of corner in the NFL, came in, and Pete Carroll even said it that rookie year. Pardon me. Didn't even know what he was doing out there. It was just all instincts. And then that combined with the shoulder injury, I think teams really started to kind of target his lack of refinement last year. And all of a sudden he went from runner-up for Defensive Rookie of the Year to is this guy going to be a part of the future of the team? Man, he was so in command of his assignments. He was practically running routes for the receivers in his area. To see him get that interception, that stuff just matters so much to these guys. And to hear Julian Love talk about him after the game and how important it was for Reek to get that was awesome and displayed the kind of leadership that I think Love has and is ready to really have on this defense now that guys like Wagner and Diggs are gone. And then, of course, Devin Witherspoon. I mean, Devin Witherspoon is probably already the best nickelback in the NFL. And he's a weapon. He's almost like Budda Baker out there in that he's technically a corner. But you can line him up everywhere and just tell him to go get the ball. I mean, he blitzes. He takes on run blocks, which is crazy for a guy his size. He almost had 2 interceptions. I couldn't have been more pleased with how the secondary played.
Yeah, I've got 2 things to add there to what you've just said. I mentioned it to Josh earlier before you joined the call, just how funny it was watching Boye Mafe and Witherspoon chasing Nix just round and round the backfield before I think Mafe ended up getting the sack when he ran out of play. But it was just so funny. It was so much energy and so much determination to get to him. And it speaks to Nix's athleticism, right, and mobility that those 2 guys on our team couldn't catch him. But it was so funny watching that juice. And the other thing I was going to mention, isn't it nice to see a safety get paid by the Seahawks and still perform?
Yeah.
That feels weird, right?
Yeah.
Open up old wounds. Come on. It's
I know. Sorry. I know
we
want to move on, but it's nice.
No, it's true. I mean, it's like obviously Earl and Cam earned that second contract when they first got paid, but the third contract's between injuries and honestly, I think Earl just going crazy And then, of course, I think the Quandre contract was fine, but the Jamal Adams deal, obviously terrible. Julian Love, and I didn't mention Rayshawn Jenkins, who was rock solid and everywhere the ball was too.
One of my new favorite players.
Yeah.
That boy can bang, and that's all I want from someone playing in that position. And I've said this for years on other podcasts Mitch and I'll be a part of, and in this podcast. I just want a secondary that people are afraid to run at or throw to. I want a wide receiver to look at a safety coming down or a cornerback and going, if I catch this ball, I may catch it, but I also may die. Yes. So people like Rayshawn Jenkins showed yesterday that if you're going to run at him, he is going to lay you out. And that is all I want, because then that starts then closing in the field where they go, right, now we've got to go outside the hashes because there's no way I'm throwing it around the center with Rayshawn Jenkins. But then you look on the outside and it's Tariq Woolen or Witherspoon or Trey Brown. And it just creates such an amazing a game for all of us to watch, because we're going to be now looking at everyone we play and going, well, where are they going to throw the ball?
Yeah, I mean,
who's going to get laid out first?
And turning the ball over, they had 2 interceptions, 2 more that Witherspoon will tell you he should have had, and they forced a fumble. It just happened to go right to the trailing blocker.
Yeah. Well, I think it was 2 fumbles. Was it not 2 fumbles? Do we have 2? There was the one where Odrick Estime tried to hurdle in the backfield and dropped the ball, or had the ball dislodged, and then there was the Kayvon Wallace one where it was punched out as well.
That's right. So you're absolutely right. So yeah, I mean, turnovers are a difficult thing to count on week to week, just because they're outlier plays. But Mike McDonald defenses consistently force a lot of turnovers, and to see that manifest itself, and to really put a rookie quarterback in hell, that's what you need to do.
Yeah,
week 1, just excited. Mitch, it's your turn anyway.
Well, we've been led in perfectly here, because my first point was efficiency on defense, in brackets, lack of yak. And I think a lot of the points that we've already talked about have led to that lack of yak. Every time a player caught the ball, we were there, just immediately there. We never had a defender more than a yard or 2 away when a player caught the ball, and they were made to pay for catching it. That is Legion of Boom stuff, being afraid to catch the ball over the middle because Earl Thomas and Cam Chancellor are hunting you. That's right. Brilliant. And I think when you look back to the last 3-4 years, possibly even longer, it feels like we've created a defense to just polish up Bobby Wagner's stat sheet. How do we get Bobby Wagner 15 tackles in a game, 180 in a season? Well, we'll let people catch the ball or run it through our D-line, and we'll stop them after a gain of 5, And we've been this bend, don't break mentality, which I don't think is bad, but it does mean you're giving up a ton of yards and giving opportunities. This defense was not giving you anything. You were made to pay for everything. So efficiency on this defense and making offenses work for every single yard they got was amazing, because we've given up a few yards to keep control, over the last few years. That's my first point.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more, Mitch. It's so frustrating if you give up a completion, that's fine. I mean, the modern NFL quarterbacks are completing 2/3 of their passes. That's fine. It's when they catch it and keep running that is just so disheartening as a fan, and I'm sure as a player and as coaches, and there was none of that yesterday.
I thought you were going to mention tackling again then. I was like, Jackson, I'm starting to fall in love with you a little bit more if you keep mentioning tackling. That's been my thing, and it will carry on being my thing. But I won't venture into that yet. Mitch, you have 3 more points. I'll let you go.
Yeah, I've got 3 more, but 2 of them are basically the same point, which is good for timekeeping. So play calling first half and play calling second half, and just the disparity between the two. And we heard a lot in the run up to the game about valuing, keeping possession of the ball and dominating the clock, and establishing the run first so we can take the top off with who we're targeting, wide receiver wise and where we're targeting them. But we didn't manage to establish that at all in the first half. And I wonder whether that was partly due to the coaching staff being surprised at how bad that O-line was. I think maybe there was a plan that we had to adapt because the O-line wasn't good enough to pull off the plan. Second half, I felt like the play calling was excellent. I thought Grubb got absolute control of the offense in spite of the O-line. We went up-tempo really quick and consistently kept that up-tempo. We ran better. We chose running backs for the plays. We used Charbonnet a lot more up the gut, and we found more space for our boy Walker on the outside of the tackles. It just seemed like we found a way to do it. And how nice is that we have an offensive coordinator that is able to get an aerial view from the box, first of all, because that's great, but also be able to read the game, ascertain what is going wrong, and actually adapt and pull that off in a halftime as well, because that was chalk and cheese, the first half and second half offense. So that's my point. I think first half play calling, second half play calling looked like two different coaches.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with that more. I think, there's so much, and I wrote about this in the first Cigar Thoughts article, because, we're a podcast now, but, for the last 10 plus years, it's been an article after each game as well. And that's still kind of where my roots are. And when I was writing about that, I said there's so much emphasis nowadays on scheme on both sides of the ball, and everyone's looking for the new scheme lord, the guy who has, cracked some code in the NFL. And I'm not poo-pooing that at all. You need that. But if you're one-dimensional, it's going to catch up to you. And the good teams can beat you when their strengths are being taken away. And, you look at, I'll point out two teams that met in the playoffs last year. You had the Miami Dolphins, who were a juggernaut on offense, and the Kansas City Chiefs, who used to be and weren't last year at all. They were not much more than an average offense last year. But when it came down to playing in the freezing cold, that finesse football didn't work, and the Chiefs were ready to body them up. And I was a little nervous. Seattle definitely came out and tried to pass. They tried to set the tone through the air, and it wasn't working. And when I heard Mike McDonald going into halftime, giving his interview, say, well, we just need to start running the ball out, I kind of rolled my eyes a little bit, because we've heard Pete Carroll say that a lot, and then them just not do it or not be able to do it. And they came out and they fucking ran that ball. They toted that rock all second half. I mean, they barely threw it all in the second half. And they were run on first down, run on second down. Normally that has me pulling my hair out, but given the way the game was going, to see real mid-game adjustments from a brand new NFL offensive coordinator, this wasn't just his first game with a new team. This was his first game at this level of football, and they came out and they did the damn thing. It was awesome.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we said it in our Discord, and obviously we were live tweeting during the game. The adjustments were so refreshing to see, because when we think just back to last season, we look at the Waldron offense, where the first scripted play or the first scripted drive, we all thought, brilliant, he can do this. Mm-hmm. Then a defense starts to change and take away the easy sort of options for him, and Waldron just didn't have an answer. He just carried on. It was like, it's the definition of madness, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, definition of insanity. And this was Grubb going, we're going to try this, but by halftime, it's not working. So we're actually going to do this, because I can see that we've got the weapons to be able to do it. We can tote the rock up the middle, which will bring into one of my points later with Charbonnet, and then we can get some space on the outside for Ken, which will then also bring these safeties down, giving us some more time over some more space over the back. And that's where Charbonnet's touchdown came from as well. Mitch, did you have another one?
Yeah, my last point is a very brief one, but I want to take you back to the fourth quarter. and specifically to the fifth, with 5 minutes remaining, we've got the ball, and it's a 2-score game for Denver. We are 2nd and 19, and I've got my notes here. I'm trying to remember exactly the way it went down, but it wasn't the way I'd have played it. But then I'm not a professional coordinator. Surprise, surprise. So we threw on 2nd and 19 with less than 5 minutes to go, up 2 scores. The following play was a sideline throw that didn't stop the clock because of a Metcalf OPI. So, and then and then the final part of, I'll do that bit in a minute. Basically, my point being, with 2 scores up, we've made the play to get the first down, to get a fresh set of downs and wind down the clock. But actually, with 5 minutes left, if we just used 2 running plays to try and get those 19 and not gone to the sideline with a throw, then potentially you can take a minute off the clock, and then it's 4 minutes in a 2-score game, with still having the chance of getting that fresh set of downs. That felt odd to me. But we also saw Mike Mack go for a 2-point score after our first touchdown, which was different. Again, it's a different approach. So we're not just toting the rock for the sake of it in the fourth quarter to wind the clock. We're not taking the PAT. We're trying to force the issue and put scoreboard pressure on, which inevitably creates that Howell effect where quarterbacks are chasing the game and throwing ints, right? And then finally, the interesting difference with our coaching staff was they gave away 2 game balls to the team, right? Now, I don't know if you guys have seen the video of Mike Mack handing out those 2 game balls, but were you surprised that a defensive player didn't get one of those balls? They carried this team.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it until now, because my takeaway was Gino giving his game ball back to Mike McDonald, which I thought was just like, that was nice. I mean, Gino's been talking about getting a new contract, right? It's easy to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to show up and do my job, but also kind of fuck you until you pay me. And that wasn't that at all. I thought that was cool. I couldn't even tell you who got the second game ball.
Tyler Lockett got it for the final
catch.
Yeah,
that's right. Well, yeah. But yes, I am surprised they didn't give it to a defensive player. I would have thought that's probably a Julian Love game ball there, but honestly, there are a lot of candidates.
Yeah, I mean, it's Dodson's first game with the green dot. Dodson's first game with the green dot, perfectly managed. You've seen fantastic candidates in the secondary all game. A team leading performance from Julian Love as well. But then I also get it, like those first downs that Tyler Lockett kept churning out, including the final one, were clutch, all of them. So I get it. But my overarching point is that between going for a 2-point conversion on the first touchdown and then not running down the clock in the fourth quarter when we were 2 scores up, and then handing out game balls to the offense when the defense were 70% of this win, shows a really interesting new mentality to this coaching staff.
Yeah, that's a great point. I had not considered any of that, and I like that. I think that's an excellent observation.
I like it as well, and I like the fact that we've mentioned Love and Gino. So I will rattle through my points. Leadership is my first point. So I think that previously we've relied on Bobby Wagner to be a figurehead. We relied on Russ to be the offensive captain. And now we seem to have this. Julian Love got the extension. In my opinion, he's that defensive leader. He showed it yesterday. He's there geeing up the troops. He's making sure everyone's in position. He may not wear the green dot, but I can guarantee he probably knows this scheme and this playbook, play-by-play. Gino, I thought, led from the front. As soon as the chips were down and the second half we all went in at the second half, we, as Seahawks fans, were watching going, it's just a repeat of last year. Nothing's changed. But for Gino to come in, stay cool, and keep that offense moving and rolling and making the right reads, I thought the play for Charbonnet's touchdown was just fantastic. That wheel route to come out, I don't think I've seen a successful one of those from Seattle for years now, because
probably Will Dissly's the last one I remember.
Well, there you go. He's like a running back.
Yeah.
But I think when you look at the leadership as well, the fact we don't have team captains, we have game captains. So Mike Mack and his coaching staff are empowering every single player to lead this team how they want. And I think it's shown the buy-in from leaders like Lockett, the fact that he was catching balls yesterday and getting yak. He wasn't just catching and flopping to the deck. You know, all the new signings that we had, they were playing for each other, and you could see that in the locker room. You could see how hyped they were for Woolen's interception, everything. I think the leadership in this team, the dynamic of it, the young leadership is just going to be so good to watch unfold. I still think going down the line, if you want a team with attitude, it's going to be Witherspoon and Metcalf as captains, providing Metcalf can stop with the OPIs and all the other silly stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. It feels like there's a lot of leaders on this team. And look, it is just one game. I mean, I thought last year through 7 games, I thought this was a great defense. They were 5-2. They were kicking people's asses. They had that amazing game on Monday night against Daniel Jones. And I mean, Daniel Jones is all I see when I look at Bo Nix. And so, like, I don't want to get out over my skis too much, but also at the end of the day, when they're handing out playoff spots, it's based on wins. And when you're new in a system and a new era too, I mean, this was the biggest era shift in the NFL outside of New England. And it was, you need to see those positive results early to really cement the buy-in. And you're right. There was just leadership everywhere from the people you expected from.
Yeah,
I love seeing it. I think so. Mitch, did anything you wanted to pop in there?
Nothing.
You've got a nugget of information that I might have missed out on. So don't worry, Jackson. If he pulls something up that you've completely forgotten or he corrects you, I get it every single pod.
I can.
Like a photographic memory.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So for me as well, Jackson, you mentioned it earlier. Regular listeners and watching this pod will know that I have banged this drum till the skin is bare. Tackling, we've spoken about it already, but the fact that the open field tackling was A, ferocious, B, effective, and C, technically sound was such a big thing for me. Even the sort of like the ankle tap tackles where you had Derek Young on the punt return, and the fact that previously that would never have happened. It would have been, he's gone past. But Derek Young putting that huge wing out and just grabbing those laces to trip, I thought that was fantastic. Dodson was amazing. Jenkins, you can see the fact that they worked on technical tackling in training, and it's starting to pay dividends. It's something we never did under Pete Carroll because for some reason, even though he was a defensive coach, he doesn't believe that tackling was a beneficial thing to practice in the later years, which blows my mind.
Yep.
Yep.
I agree.
I've got 2 more bits. We've mentioned it as well. I said there's a lot of crossover with these, but the running back usage, I have said it since last season. I do not see why any offensive coordinator is going to keep trying to run Ken Walker up the middle. He is an outside running back. You're not really going to get a lot of him out of power unless you've got a defensive line that's tired. I don't see why we keep doing it. We've drafted someone like Charbonnet, who, apart from that safety where he was let down by the O-line, has shown that he has got that power. He will drive through and make those 3 to 4 yards every single time. Ken, however, he'll run to his gap. He'll see a guard that's in there. He'll try and step by, and he ends up getting tackled behind the line. I just really want to see that improve. I want them to start being a bit more intelligent with who they use and when. Because Charbonnet can hit outside as well, as we've seen. I just think Ken needs to be that outside threat, or you'd let him go inside towards the 3rd or 4th quarter when people are tired. Weirdly, like we did yesterday. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. You want to lean into your strengths. The only caveat to that, I think, is if you if you never run, and I know this is not what you're proposing, but if you're never running Ken Walker up the middle and you're only running Zach Charbonnet up the middle, you are giving a tell to the defense when those guys are on the field. So you do have to mix it up. I thought Ken Walker was a lot more decisive when running up the middle. He was willing to just take the 2-yard gain instead of trying to turn it into a 40-yard gain every time. I thought that was encouraging, because then eventually he did get his opportunity. And once he got in the open field, it was like, oh yeah, that's one of the most talented ball carriers on the planet right now. You saw he won on that touchdown with all aspects of his game. But you do, if you have a guy like Ken Walker, you really do need a guy like Zach Charbonnet. And last year, Charbonnet was, when he wasn't filling in for Walker when he was injured, Charbonnet was kind of the 4-minute drill guy. He was kind of the passing downs guy. And that's its own tell, right? You got Charbonnet out on the field, and it's like, well, okay, the chances of them running the ball just went down. And Charbonnet is a very good pass blocker, and he's a very good receiver. He showed that at both Michigan and UCLA, but he is first and foremost a between the tackles runner. And I don't know how much of the other games you guys watched yesterday, but I think there were only 10 quarterbacks who threw for more than 200 yards. The teams that ran the ball yesterday won. And I've been saying it for years, as, there's been a big analytics movement, and I'm very pro analytics, saying almost you should never run the ball because your EPA on pass attempts is almost always higher. Look, man, that's changing. That's been changing for 2-3 years. And if you cannot run the ball between the tackles, this is not me being some old school refuse to adapt football fan. Fact of the matter is, the teams that won yesterday ran the shit out of the ball. And one of them was Seattle. And Zach Charbonnet, to your point, really helps you do that.
Yeah. To the point you just made as well. So sorry, to your point, I think now if you look at running backs coming out of college football, the number of genuine dual threat running backs that are actual receiving threats has gone through the roof. Like it's crazy now. It's almost like if you're not both things, you're almost a UDFA or a 6th-round pick. Every running back coming out of college now is dual, and you only have to look at our roster to see you've got 3 genuine dual threats, and even Halani, who's on the practice squad, is also that. So I think the league has changed, and I think over the last 3 years it's changed alongside that, where offensive coordinators have multiple running backs on the roster that can do both.
Yeah, it's no longer just splicing in Mark Ingram and Darren Sproles. And it's like, you know what you're getting when Sproles is out there, and you know what you're getting when Ingram is out there. You really do have to do both. And it's been kind of cool to see how the body composition of running backs has changed. My favorite running back in the NFL right now is Devon Achane. And the Dolphins couldn't get the running game going yesterday. I think Mostert had 9 yards on 6 carries. Achane had 25 on 10. But Devon Achane had 7 catches for 75 yards. And it's like, that to me is the blueprint moving forward. Javonte Williams, I think, is so talented. You saw Denver do this. So talented and is a good receiver and all of those things. And then you look at sprightly little Jaleel McLaughlin, and you're like, oh, that's my little scat back dude. Nope. When he was in there, Sean Payton was running that dude right at the defense too. It's a great point. It's what you got to do right now, because defenses and defensive coordinators and all of the film study and analytics, you just have to disguise your tells so much more these days. And having a running back who can do both things really, really helps you do that.
That's why I love Kenny McIntosh, because he can do those things. He's just waiting for his time to go. Totally.
He's very exciting also. I think he's someone that is good enough to get real snap counts in a different backfield.
So, which brings me on to my the 12th and final point for our 12 talking points. I think there are more sacks to come. I think yesterday we showed consistent pressure with very vanilla looks on the D-line. There wasn't as many stunts. There wasn't as much movement. I think they did a very effective job of just closing in that pocket over Bo Nix. But as Witherspoon said, they haven't even opened up that defensive playbook properly yet. This was a taster. This was them dipping their toes in the water to make sure they were fundamentally sound. I think as soon as they start opening up that playbook, we're going to see that D-line feast, and I cannot wait.
Yeah. That's a great point. I mean, and for usually when you have a defense that's as dominant as Mike McDonald's was in Baltimore, and that Christmas night game where I think they turned Brock Purdy over 5 times, and it just looked like, John Schneider said it felt like we were playing against 13 guys when Seattle played against him last year. Both Shanahan and McVay have said the McDonald defenses, it feels like there's 12 guys out there. It really is illusion of complexity. It's not like his defenses are doing a bunch of circus acts on the front line. They're just so well coached, and really he tries to make the defense more binary, and it's just kind of ones and zeros, and you've got 2 keys. Each player has 2 keys. They're not having to do a whole lot. They're looking for this key, and one step into the play, everybody knows, okay, my key did this, so I'm doing that, and everyone does it, instead of spending the first 2 seconds of a play diagnosing. And yeah, there's no question there's more exoticism to come, but I don't think it's going to be something where we're seeing a whole lot of, crazy blitzes and stunts and stuff. They were so effective playing straight up with their front four yesterday that as they start to sprinkle in the stuff that Mitch that both of you guys are talking about in terms of adding to that playbook and cracking it open, man, it's so encouraging. They're going to need it because they play some really good quarterbacks in the middle of this season and down the stretch.
Yeah, I think, I just think that we did an outstanding job of creating that pressure. And Nix is such a mobile quarterback anyway, that you're always going to, even if you get that penetration and you achieve what you wanted to achieve at the line, finishing that move is going to be difficult. And we, as a team that play Kyler Murray twice a year, we're going to have to be able to capitalize on those moments a bit better than we did yesterday. But I also think, like you say, Josh, there's pages and pages more in that playbook to throw in something to spice it up, to keep quarterbacks guessing. We've got so many rookie quarterbacks to play this year. We're going to have more games like this where we can, confuse and bamboozle and then also go back to fundamentals and still do those really well like we did yesterday. So there's loads to come from this defense. I'm really happy.
Well, that is it for our 12 talking points. Let us know what you thought. Do you agree with our talking points? Do you think that we've got the right steer on this? I'd just like to say thank you so much to Jacson. I completely appreciate where you are at the moment on a golf course, waiting to meet a client. So before we go, tell everyone where we can find you, what you've got coming up. I'll be waiting for the notifications to come through on my phone for your next pod.
Thanks. You guys are extremely kind, and I had a blast doing this. This is real smart Seahawks talk, and is incredibly refreshing for me because I am so blessed with my show to get to talk ball with people who really understand the game, and you guys are definitely that. If anyone listening wants more of me for some reason, you can find my podcast anywhere you get podcasts at Cigar Thoughts. A football show is the name. We're also on YouTube. We've got full video episodes there as well. I've got a fantastic producer in Mike Barwin who does a tremendous job editing it and putting out clips as well. So YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, anywhere you get that. Feel free to check us out. We got a show every week. And then after each game, it usually takes me 2-3 hours to put my spin on what I saw. And you can do that by searching Cigar Thoughts. The host site for that is fieldgoals.com. But again, just put in Cigar Thoughts, it'll come up. So appreciate it, fellas.
Awesome. No, thank you very much for the kind words. I really appreciate that. Also, Mitch, we need a producer, so I've not got to do all the editing anymore. It's a big drain.
I don't earn enough for this.
Well, yeah, with that, for Weeping the 12 Talk podcast, this has been Jacson Bevens, who's been a fantastic guest, and thank you so much for spending your time. I'd like to end this with a Go Hawks before we jump into the outro music. So, gentlemen, would you like to join me to Go Hawks?
Go Hawks.
Do it.
Go Hawks.
Hawks.